For more on the rotting roots of Dalton McGuinty's green energy pipe dream, we turn to Tom Harris from the International Climate Science Coalition. Hey, Tom.
Hey, hi, Charles.
Tom, did I miss anything there? You correct me if I was wrong about anything I was saying.
No, everything you're saying is right. And in fact, if we really want to see what impact the creation of green jobs has on the economy, we just have to look to Europe. And like you said, millions of euros are wasted per job. And let's see, we got here, for example, in Italy, leading economists showed that on average, as many as 4.8 jobs in the entire economy are lost per creation of green jobs. And it's quite funny, if you actually look at the government's description of the purpose of the Green Energy Act, they say, the Green Energy Act is a bold series of coordinated actions to enhance economic activity and to reduce our impact on climate. So that's the fundamental environmental reason. And they've completely ignored things like this. This is the non-governmental International Panel on Climate Change. An updated version of this came out on the 29th of August, and they say things very clearly. They've gone through thousands of research papers that the UN and presumably Dalton McGuinty have completely ignored. They say this, for example, real-world observations do not support the IPCC's claims that current trends in weather are unusual and therefore the product of CO2-induced warming. So all Dalton McGuinty has to do is have a look at this, and the federal government as well, and they realize that the foundation of things like the Green Energy Act are pointless.
Tom, I want you to help me with something, and you don't need to be an economist. You just need to be who you are, a person with both feet planted in the real world. I'm still getting people saying to me, Chuck, you get absorbed in this idea of a government throwing money at new enterprise, that governments have done this all the time, that that's how new enterprise becomes successful enterprise. My problem is, and I'm stuck on this, you can't throw something at somebody if there's no demand for the product and if there's no likelihood of demand. So let's go to the demand side. What would have had to happen, Tom Harris, in the real world for demand for these solar powers, solar panels and windmills and all the other green energy stuff, all these products? What would have had to happen in the real world to feed the enormous demand that the Dalton McGuintys claimed there would be? What would we have to see out there for the demand to be there?
Well, for it to work in Canada, we would have to have basically a revolution in technology, because a lot of these energy sources are what you call negative on net energy. In other words, if you add up the energy it takes to make solar panels, to install them, and to keep the snow off them, dust them, everything else, and the fact that they don't produce electricity at night, you actually find that in many cases, they will never actually recover the energy it took to make them. So those sources would never be economical under any circumstances unless you had a radical revolution in technology. And we've been subsidizing these energy sources for decades, and we still haven't seen that radical revolution yet. So the bottom line is, yes, if you're living in the desert in Arizona and you're not on the electrical grid, sure, use solar power. But if you're living in Canada, where we have limited solar energy, limited, a lot of the year the sun is very low, it's just not economical under any circumstances. Independent of the actual dollars, the actual energy you get back is less than the amount that it takes to make them. The Germans, for example, said in a recent study, they said it's most likely that whatever jobs are created by renewable energy promotion would vanish as soon as the government support is terminated, leaving only exporters to benefit for other countries that are still buying them. One thing we have to realize is China are always held up as this great example. Oh, they're making so many wind turbines. But the bottom line is the rate at which they're growing their coal-fired electricity is 85 times as fast as they're growing all the renewable sector except hydro combined. So, yeah, China's making lots of wind turbines and solar panels, but that's to sell to suckers who think they can run their country on it.
Right, and Tom, here's what you have swerved into, and this truth is something that everyone watching has got to take away. The Chinese who do know what they're doing, the Chinese who know how to expand their economy every year, most of their money is going into these coal plants.
Oh, yeah.
Now, it wouldn't be going into the coal plants if they thought there would be a massive shortage of coal, or, just as important, if they thought coal was going to be prohibitively expensive. The point is, as long as we have an abundance of fossil fuels, whether it's coal, whether it's gas, whether it's oil, as long as we've got an abundance of them at decent market prices, all of Dalton's projects are going nowhere.
Yes,
because there's no demand for it.
Right, and his main focus is to close down all the coal stations. That makes no sense whatsoever. What he should do is clean up the coal stations, because some of them are not using yet the most advanced pollution technology. Coal is a fabulous energy source. We have enough for hundreds and hundreds of years. The United States, for example, is the biggest coal reserve in the world. So obviously, this is a source we should use in an environmentally friendly way.
But I think you'll agree, economics 101, the only way to create a demand for the alternative is if demand disappears for the traditional. And that can only happen if the price of the traditional forms of energy go up exponentially, or if those forms of energy, fossil fuels, disappear. Tom Harris, thanks very much for not disappearing, for giving us access to your wisdom. Appreciate it very much, sir.
Thank you.